So what's vitamin C? Well, there's really many different forms of vitamin C. And so what I say is, with the real vitamin C, please stand up. Most of what you're going to see out there is ascorbic acid. Now, ascorbic acid is pH 3. It's very acidic. And most people, when they look at cancer, they're like, well, an acidic nature is not good in cancer. And that's true, but understand it's not the body wide. It's actually just in what's called the tumor microenvironment. But ascorbic acid itself is a pH of 3. And that has a lot of issues: poor tolerability. It increases the acidity of the body of the patient, which we don't want. So thus we come to what's called sodium ascorbate. Sodium ascorbate is simply just a sodium salt of ascorbic acid. And guess what? It has a pH around 7.4. So essentially what we're dealing with sodium ascorbate is just one sodium molecule that's added to the ascorbic acid molecule, but it makes that big a difference in the pH, and it makes that big a difference in treatment, because that pH of 7.4 is going to have a huge impact on the tolerability of the treatment by the patient. The molar masses are different between the two compounds. The melting points are different between the two compounds. They are different molecules, but they are separated by simply one sodium molecule. What's interesting about sodium ascorbate, it's naturally occurring. It's naturally occurring in citrus fruit. It's naturally occurring in vegetables. Ascorbic acid is not. I actually found this interesting quote saying, quote, "Sodium ascorbate is an approved food additive." I find that interesting because it's naturally present in foods. So when we, in a holistic, integrative approach to the treatment of cancer, introduce therapies, we want to introduce therapies that work with the body. And so sodium ascorbate is a pH neutral. It's going to work better with the body. Again, it's naturally present in food. We don't want to introduce therapies that work against the body. We want to introduce therapies that work with the body. And sodium ascorbate is one such example that does that. Now, a lot of people out there may say that vitamin C is not a vitamin. Now, this is a little bit kind of an esoteric debate, but I think it's important because you're going to see more of this. A Polish biochemist by the name of Casimir Funk, in the late 19th century to early 20th century, he coined this term vitamin. And it was really coming out of what he thought and what a lot of people thought were molecules that were essential and required to sustain life. And they called these amines. And they thought that these were critical for life. In Latin, that's vita. So they put these together and you got vitamins. And so these were chemicals or compounds that they thought were amines or like amines and vital to life-sustaining properties. But the biological function of vitamin C is not defined by a name. When you get down to the bare knuckles of it, vitamin C is simply an electron donor. And we'll talk about that in a second. If you want to go, well, what is vitamin C doing? It's donating electrons, and that acts as a buffer, and that actually acts as the means in how vitamin C can kill cancer cells, but not non-cancer cells or normal cells. Now, we as humans don't make vitamin C. We have inherited a preserved deficiency in an enzyme called glutathione oxidase. Say that 3 times fast. This enzyme that we don't have disables our ability to make vitamin C. And guess what we would make it from if we were able to? Sugar. That's why if you're ever getting IV vitamin C and they check a glucometer or check your glucose, your glucose is going to be sky high. It's not because it's picking up glucose, it's because it's picking up vitamin C. And I think it's important too here to understand that these word origins have integral meaning, and we need to recognize historically where they come from, because these words, they really apply the meaning to how we use these therapies today. If we lose the meaning, if we lose the historical context of what we're doing here, we lose that historical foundation of what we're doing. And vitamin C is something that we have to recognize its origins, because it's going to be an impactful treatment now, and it's going to be impactful treatment moving forward. So what is vitamin C? Well, it's a lot of things. First, it's vitamin C. Second, it is reduced ascorbic acid. As I mentioned, this is the pH 3. When vitamin C or ascorbic acid loses or donates an electron, it becomes the oxidized form called dehydroascorbate. A lot of that happens outside the cancer cell in what's called the tumor microenvironment, but understand that cancer cells can take up both that DHA and that ascorbic acid. It's taken up differently. Different pathways will take it up. So for example, what's called the GLUT receptors will take up the DHA, and the ascorbic acid is taken up via the SVCTs, or what's called vitamin C dependent transporters. At its basic mechanism, vitamin C is an electron donor. So if you're looking at this from an organic chemistry or a biochemical perspective, that's the answer. What's vitamin C? It's donating electrons. It acts as what's called a redox buffer. So we think about pH as alkaline acidity, and that's a buffer system. Our body buffers that. So if we take in ascorbic acid as a pH of 3, the body's going to buffer that because a pH of 3 is not suitable for life. It's going to bring that up to a more alkaline of 7.4. Likewise, redox and oxidation is a buffering system, and vitamin C is integral in that process. And that is also the mechanisms by which vitamin C kills cancer cells. There are those out there that are calling vitamin C a drug. Now, I've seen this pattern before where a natural therapy has been called a drug, and then the FDA regulates it and no longer becomes publicly available. So obviously, I'm a little apprehensive or a little biased about people starting to call it a drug. It's really not a drug. I mean, when you look at the word drug from word origin, it actually comes from the 14th century, so 1300, Anglo-French. It means any substance used in composition or preparation of medicines. Well, vitamin C is not a medicine. In the 16th century, it became associated with poisons. Well, vitamin C is definitely not a poison. And then in the 19th century, it became equated to narcotics and opiates, and it's definitely none of those. So I think when you look at the concept of how vitamin C is trying to be labeled as a drug, I think this is inappropriate, and honestly, I think it's nefarious, and it's an attempt to regulate it. So beyond electron donor, what we really have to look at is it's the delivery of hydrogen peroxide to the tumor microenvironment and the cancer cell. So the tumor microenvironment is kind of an environment by which the tumor and the cancer cells interact. No longer can one look at cancer as a solid ball of cells that isolates itself from the body. There is a zone of interaction. And in that zone, vitamin C does a lot of great work and produces a lot of hydrogen peroxide. So if you want to use that drug analogy, which again, I don't like, but hydrogen peroxide is the prodrug. Hydrogen peroxide is the purpose of vitamin C. This occurs outside the tumor cell, in the tumor microenvironment, and that cancer cell takes it up, and that is where all the action happens. That hydrogen peroxide goes through a series of reactions called Fenton reactions, where then this process depletes the cancer cell of glutathione. It actually downregulates NAD. It actually changes metabolism within the cancer cell, and that triggers cancer cell death. It's an amazing therapy, but it has to be dosed right. It has to be dosed pro-oxidatively, and that's what the hydrogen peroxide does. Now, beyond the hydrogen peroxide, it's about the therapeutic effect or pharmaceutical ascorbic acid. So all of these labels or names are vitamin C. So they are all of these, but at its basic core, it's a prodrug by delivering hydrogen peroxide, but it's an electron donor. And it's through these mechanisms in which it kills the cancer cells, but doesn't damage the healthy cells. That's the beauty of it. Two environments, healthy cells, cancer cells. High dose vitamin C kills the cancer cells, and it doesn't harm the healthy cells. Study after study after study has shown this. So this concept, how can ascorbic acid, which is pH of 3, and sodium ascorbate have a pH around 7.4, so neutral, how can one molecule, one element like sodium change the impact of the molecule that much? Well, guess what? When we look at hormones, where I cut my teeth, we see that same consistent recurrent theme. One small change in a hormone, in a molecule, will have a huge impact. So progesterone Progesterone is a hormone that women produce. Men produce a little bit of it, not much. Medroxyprogesterone acetate is the drug meant to mimic progesterone. There's this fascination, by the way, in conventional medicine with drugs. Progesterone is not a drug, it's a hormone. Well, when you look at progesterone versus medroxyprogesterone acetate, I wouldn't give medroxyprogesterone acetate to my enemies. It's a bad drug. Their half-lives are different. Their binding and circulation through the blood's different. I mean, medroxyprogesterone acetate even acts as a male hormone, what's called an androgen. It even acts as a glucocorticoid or mineralocorticoid. So it even acts as a steroid, though hormones are steroids. So one small difference, progesterone, medroxyprogesterone acetate, can have a huge physiologic impact in how hormones will impact the body. In many cases, the impact on cancer. Estrogen, same. When you look at estrogen, we have three types of estrogen here: estradiol, estrone, estriol. Estriol is the estrogen dominant during pregnancy, but these three estrogens, minor differences. So for example, estradiol, there's a hydroxyl group at the 17 position. Estrone, there's a carbonyl group there. And then estriol is just different in its interaction with the receptors, but all three of these estrogens will interact with estrogen receptors differently. Estradiol will interact with what's called ER alpha higher, and that's more proliferative. I said that wrong. Estradiol is 1-to-1 with ER alpha and ER beta. Estrone is dominant with ER alpha. So when a person has breast cancer and they say ER positive, that is estrogen receptor alpha. So estrone is the estrogen that dominates after menopause in women, and this estrogen gets produced from fat, and it is why it dominates after menopause, because it promotes breast cancer at that time in how it interacts with estrogen receptors. And then estriol actually has a dominant interaction with estrogen receptor beta, which is a counter-regulatory estrogen receptor to ER alpha. Little technical, but the point here is one small difference, one small change in a molecule can have a huge impact in not just signaling, but things like cancer. Testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, DHT, 3-alpha androstenedione, all three of these are male hormones, but all three of them have different potency. They have different androgen receptor affinity. They have different dissociation rates. They have different elimination rates, all because they have slight variations, not sodium molecule, sodium element like what you would see in sodium ascorbate, but small additions, whether it's a carbonyl group, whether it's a hydrogen group, whether it's a methyl group, are changing these hormones to cause drastically different effects throughout the body. Finally, thyroid, everybody focuses on T4, levothyroxine synthroid. This is the hormone that's most dominant in terms of production from thyroid, but T3 is the most potent. You're taking off an iodine molecule here. T4 has 4 iodine, T3 has 3, but yet one's more powerful because it has less iodine. And then reverse T3 is just the mirror image of the T3, and it is inactive. But in cancer, what you see is that these thyroid hormones can actually promote the cancer growth. But the point here is that one small change, can have a significant impact in function, just as with ascorbic acid and sodium ascorbate. And here we're just giving you some examples of how this already exists in physiology. So why does it even matter? Whether it's ascorbic acid or sodium ascorbate, why does it bother? Well, because my job as a physician and as medical director of Brio-Medical is to treat people with all forms of cancer and other variety of autoimmune diseases, Lyme, et cetera. But it's to provide effective therapies, efficient and effective therapies. And if I can't therapeutically dose because something like ascorbic acid is pH negative, then I can't reach tolerability and compliance in my dosing. So I've got to introduce a therapy that's going to be pH neutral. Tolerability. Thus, I'm going to be able to reduce side effects. I'm going to be able to increase the frequency of the dosing. The patient is going to be able to comply with the frequent dosing, the high dosing, and that is where we're going to get the pharmacological effect of the vitamin C. So when you look at the vitamin C fundamentals, I mean, Linus Pauling back in the 70s really said it well. He basically said, look, as a part of training, we understand how drugs need to be dosed, how drugs need to be delivered to the tissue, and how we need to monitor that. But yet when it comes to something natural like vitamins, particularly here with vitamin C, it gets thrown out the door. It gets thrown out the window. What I tell our patients here at Brio is that being in the science, reading the research, actually forces one to become more natural. Doing things holistic and natural doesn't imply you throw science out the window. In fact, being in the science requires you to be more natural. So the fundamentals of vitamin C include pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, bioavailability, dosing, duration, frequency. Pharmacokinetics is simply understanding that the way the vitamin C comes into the body, how it's absorbed into the body, how it's distributed throughout the body, how it interacts with the point of action. Pharmacokinetics is really how something is delivered and how it gets to the point of action. Pharmacodynamics is just really looking at the site of action, the resulting effects, and side effects. These are the mechanisms by which pharmacology has looked at drugs and utilized this to help patients. It also applies to natural therapies. And this is where a lot of people out there will use vitamin C and not dose it right because it doesn't get delivered right pharmacokinetically. You intuitively know this. When somebody's sitting next to somebody that's 6'5", 355 pounds, and you're 5'2" and 120 pounds, and you're both getting 50 grams of vitamin C, you both have different types of cancer, and you're like, this just doesn't seem quite right to me. Intuitively, you're right. It's because of pharmacokinetics that is the case. Tumor burden also plays a role there. The deficiency of vitamin C in the individual plays a role there. The body size plays a role there. All of these come together to play a role. Bioavailability is just what we discovered the late 1990s and early 2000s, is that when you give vitamin C orally, it's not absorbed well. In fact, the more vitamin C you take by mouth, the more the gut downregulates the absorption of vitamin C. So that's why vitamin C failed as an oral therapy with the Mayo studies from Rochester. They completely did not understand that there's a difference in bioavailability of delivery of vitamin C by mouth versus IV. Dose, critical. We've got to reach a pro-oxidative dose. This begins at least 1 gram per kilogram, but typically 1.5 gram per kilogram. And then you must test to make sure that you're achieving therapeutic values. Then it's not just about dose, it's also about duration. We recognize, thank you to Dr. Reardon and others, that there's a certain plasma blood level of vitamin C that we want to achieve. And the longer we can achieve that, the longer we can stay there, the more cancer cells we can kill. So with therapeutic plasma ascorbic acid levels, that correlates directly with hydrogen peroxide, which again is the mechanism by which vitamin C kills cancer cells, but it's through that prodrug hydrogen peroxide. The duration is to keep ourselves there as long as we can. Frequency. When you look at the vitamin C in healthy cells versus cancer cells, there's a difference. When they looked at research in liver, vitamin C in healthy liver cells is going to pretty much be eliminated in 16 hours. In the blood, it's gone in 2 hours. So in healthy tissue, vitamin C is used up, it's gone. But guess what? In cancer cells, not only do cancer cells have a higher affinity for vitamin C, but it holds on to it for up to 48 hours. So it's not just enough to use vitamin C. One has to recognize all of the intricacies that go into how to dose it, how to deliver it, how to monitor it, and how to maximize it. Because we can give somebody a dose of vitamin C that should be a high dose, say 1 gram per kilogram of vitamin C, which is a lot, by the way. And then you check plasma vitamin C levels, and they still need more. So you can't just give a dose and expect it to hold. You have to monitor it because that demand will go up and down. So when we look at the concept of vitamin C, it really comes down to these 4 critical parameters. Bioavailability. You can't treat cancer with oral vitamin C. In fact, there's research that suggests inadequate vitamin C can actually promote cancer stem cells. Let me repeat that because it's important. Inadequate dosing of vitamin C via the oral route actually could promote cancer stem cells. So this is why it's important to use vitamin C or get vitamin C if you're a patient by somebody who is using it therapeutically, by design, by the science, by the evidence, for a purpose. Then we want to dose it right. You start off by dosing it by weight, then you want to dose it for duration. We want to achieve a therapeutic level in that blood. We want to monitor it, and we want to stay there as long as we can, because we need this vitamin C to penetrate the tumor, to produce hydrogen peroxide. And here's another thing. There's areas within the tumor that are hypoxic, that lack oxygen, and those that have normal oxygen. The vitamin C is not going to penetrate all those areas the same. Those areas that lack oxygen, the vitamin C is not going to penetrate that well. So you need higher doses of vitamin C. And then we got to frequently give the dose. So if cancer cells will hold on to it up to 48 hours, a bare minimum is 3 times a week. So if you're getting vitamin C, 50 grams 1 time a week, and you're dealing with cancer, that is a therapeutic dose. That is a non-therapeutic dose that I would gauge may even be actually promoting the cancer. So why is vitamin C important? Well, I hope that I've been able to tell you that it kills cancer cells, but that can only happen with the right dose. The right dose is going to be different for each person. It's not necessarily going to be a word or a phrase, low dose, high dose, therapeutic dose, or pharmacological dose. The right dose is the dose that elicits the effect that we're after, which here it's to kill cancer cells. So if you have a small individual, 120 pounds, 5'2", it might be that you can give them 100 grams vitamin C. Their plasma ascorbic acid levels achieve 350 to 450 nanograms per deciliter, and you're going to see significant pro-oxidative effect and cancer killing effects. But if you give that same dose to somebody, like I said, 6'6", 335 pounds, that right dose in that small individual is going to be a low dose in the other individual. So what we have to do is understand all the different parameters that come together to help us to achieve the right dose, which could be a low dose, could be a high dose, but it's to achieve a therapeutic dose, but primarily it's here to achieve a pharmacological dose, which is the production of hydrogen peroxide. See, vitamin C, it's a natural therapy. It's a holistic therapy, but we're using it very differently. We have to use it big. We have to use it scientific. We have to use it as guided by the evidence, because otherwise we're not going to get a therapeutic effect, and we may actually hurt the person, that is, help the cancer. So if we don't use it right, the oncologist will say, see, it doesn't work. But if we use it right, there's actually research that shows that high dose pro-oxidative vitamin C helps in chemotherapy and helps in radiation. The tide's turning on vitamin C. The science is showing that. Many doctors aren't up to speed on it, but if you're going to use vitamin C in the treatment of cancer, please go to somebody like here at Brio, where we're going to treat you as a patient with cancer. We're going to follow the science in that. So why does it matter? Well, it's about dose, it's about duration, it's about bioavailability. Should be frequency, a little bit of a typo there. Because what we're going to do, it's going to create oxidative stress within the cancer cell. Again, that hydrogen peroxide that gets produced outside the cancer cell gets taken up into the cancer cell preferentially. And within that, that's where you get what's called oxidative stress. You get this burst, and it actually depletes the cancer cell of glutathione. It downregulates glutathione, which is a key detoxifying molecule. That is a mechanism by which it kills cancer cells. So if you're a patient with cancer, you have a loved one or family member with cancer, or you're a doctor treating cancer, you do not want to give them glutathione. You're actually potentially propagating the cancer. We want to deplete the cell of glutathione to kill it via vitamin C through hydrogen peroxide. We got to deliver it all through the tumor. There are different areas within the tumor, some with oxygen, some without. And that vitamin C has to be dosed to penetrate all of it, all of it. And we have to saturate that entire tissue. If we're going to kill a tumor, if we're going to shrink a tumor, we need to make sure we use the bench scientific research behind vitamin C and really use it. Otherwise, The oncologist may be right, but when we use it right, we're right. And that's the science that shows that. And here's just a few studies here. And again, these are studies in people. These aren't studies in animals. These are studies in people. The last one, Let the Phoenix Fly, is more of a review article that it's reviewing a lot of different articles. And notice the one there from the Frontier of Oncology. It's 2021. A lot of the research on vitamin C has been really prominent and propagated over the last 10 years or so. So really exciting times for vitamin C, but there's a lot of misinformation and information out there that people aren't understanding. So when you look at the mechanisms of actions of vitamin C, it's really broad. And all of these are evidence-based, reproducibly in the data, in the science. It's epigenetic, so it induces genetic expression changes in the cancer cells. It's directly cytotoxic to cancer cells, but not to healthy cells. This is key. It doesn't deplete the healthy cells of glutathione. It'll kill cancer cells and it won't hurt the healthy cells. It blocks the cancer cell growth. It's anti-proliferative. It actually turns off inflammation. Genetically, how it's transcribed, what's called NF-kappa B, it's a transcription factor for inflammation. Vitamin C turns it off. It blocks angiogenesis and lymphogenesis. Angiogenesis is the process by which blood vessels form for cancer and support it with its growth for nutrients in blood. Vitamin C blocks that. It triggers apoptosis, and I kind of mentioned that with the depletion of glutathione. It's much broader than that, but that's one mechanism. It actually is what's called immunomodulatory. It can stimulate natural killer cells. It can increase the number of natural killer cells and their activity, and do the same with cytotoxic T lymphocytes. Both of these, I call them the Marine and the armies of how the immune system attacks cancer. But it can also suppress things that suppress the immune system in the tumor microenvironment. So what's called myelodeprived suppressor cells and transforming growth factor beta. These are things in the tumor microenvironment that suppress the immune system that allow the cancer to turn the immune system on the immune system. Really interesting, but vitamin C will actually suppress that process. It is antiviral. I mean, we're coming out of the COVID pandemic. Vitamin C is antiviral. You can take a look at your viruses, whether it's sepsis or whether it's just viral infection alone. It's antiviral. Broad in how its effects are. We don't have time to talk about that, but very evidence-based. It actually inhibits the mitochondrial membrane potential, which destroys the cell membrane potential, which destroys cancer cells. But it doesn't do that to healthy cells. I mean, is there a therapy out there that actually will kill cancer cells and not hurt healthy cells? It's vitamin C. It's actually anti-cancer stem cells. It'll kill cancer stem cells. Combine it with doxycycline, it'll kill cancer stem cells. That's the backup you want no part of. It's anti-metastatic. So metastasis is how cancer cells spread. And cancer cells, when they're circulating, they surround themselves with a ball of platelets called a cancer cell platelet aggregate. And that protects the platelets, the cancer cell with those platelets. It buffers it from the immune system and this just sheer stress of the blood. And vitamin C comes in there and it inhibits that process and it allows natural killer cells to penetrate that cancer cell platelet aggregate. It does damage DNA when it's pro-oxidative. So if an oncologist tells you that vitamin C is antioxidative, if you take 2,000 milligrams by mouth, he'd be right. But because of the difference of bioavailability that the Rochester studies misunderstood, that Linus Pauling even misunderstood, we now know when you dose vitamin C pro-oxidatively, high dose to deliver hydrogen peroxide to the tumor microenvironment and in the cancer, you will not only induce DNA damage for cancer cells that kills them, but you will augment that with radiation chemotherapy that's listed down below. It's a redox buffer. That's its primary mechanism of how vitamin C is killing cancer cells. It's donating electrons. It actually is changing what's called metabolomics. Now, new research in terms of where cancer is going, it's epigenomics, it's genomics, it's proteomics, and it's metabolomics. Metabolomics is just the collection of the metabolites. Vitamin C induces metabolomic changes in the cancer cells. Cancer cells are addicted to sugar, And vitamin C comes in and turns enzymes off. So it's addicted to sugar and now can no longer use it. It actually targets hypoxia, which is the low oxygen. It actually promotes collagen. Some of the original research in cancer and vitamin C is that that collagen or depletion of collagen was playing an integral role in how cancer was spreading. And so adding vitamin C in helps. The extracellular matrix is involved in the tumor microenvironment. Vitamin C is critical in preserving the extracellular matrix and preserving an anti-tumor environment in the tumor microenvironment. I could talk for hours on the tumor microenvironment because that's where all the action is. It's a cofactor in many enzymatic functions. Again, it augments chemotherapy. It reduces side effects of chemotherapy. It augments radiation and reduces side effects of radiation. It augments surgery. Surgery suppresses the immune system. That's why you see local recurrence and you see spread. By the way, chemo, radiation, and surgery all spread cancer. They will shrink a primary tumor and spread it. So if we cause cancer to spread, which is why 90% of cancer mortality and morbidity exists, what have we really done? Vitamin C is a therapy that can actually, with surgery, help to reduce that recurrence locally and spread throughout the body. Vitamin C is integral in hormone metabolism, and it's great as an immunotherapeutic alone, but it's great as working with conventional immunotherapeutic drugs today, like what are called immune checkpoint inhibitors that conventional medicine uses, and vitamin C has been shown to augment those therapies. So it's a therapy that stands alone, but it's a therapy that also works with conventional medicine. So it's a therapy that works everywhere.